the next 21 days, we want to explore what are the conditions where you can understand, unlock, and unleash your greatest potential. This is also a challenge for me to learn how to teach better and how to communicate better some of the ideas that helped me to grow as a millennial. And first, today we will talk about when to quit your job. I know this sounds really strange, especially in the middle of a pandemic where you might be thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't quit my job because I'm not sure if a real job is going to come along soon. What if I don't? Well, over the next few minutes, we'll look at some of the conditions and factors that enable you to thrive and flourish in the workplace, and also, more importantly, how you can find fit and create fit, and when you should consider quitting so that you can find something better. So let's start. When you should quit your job? Well, there are many myths on there. So if you look at something like this flower, we know that it's in the desert. So in the desert, do you think a flower can flourish? Well, I'm not sure. As you can see, this flower has probably been photoshopped in there and it probably isn't real. But similarly, you as a young professional can probably try the very hardest in your workplace, but you might not find that you are flourishing. And so rather than figuring out and blaming yourself for not flourishing, maybe it's time to think about how you can find a place where you can flourish. And so the first factor we want to look at is congruence. Are you living congruent to your skills and your interests? There are many myths on there. The first myth is that if you love what you do, you will never have to work another day in your life. This is popularized by Steve Jobs, the creator of Apple's iPhones and iPods, who said the only way to do great work is to love what you do. This is only part of the truth. A better way is to look at it in a three-pronged approach. Firstly, what your purpose for. Secondly, what your passion or interest is. And lastly, where your profit driver is, or where you can earn money doing the work that you do. The passion hypothesis is very, very popular. It's popularized by this man called Richard Boles, who is a former priest who wrote this series of books called What Color Is Your Parachute? And in this series of books, he opined that when you find your interests and your passions, that's when you will start loving and doing great work. Well, this is only part of the truth. In Cal Newport's great book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, Cal Newport talks about how you need to get good before you get good work. And why is that important? Well, if we look at it, the first reason why that is important is because you can either chase the linear growth, which is your passion, or you can chase the power curve, which is your skill. If you look at people who have deliberately built up their skill over time, if you look at your workplace, the people who are the most skilled at their jobs are not just 1 or 2% better. Their skills are magnified much more than yours. Let's take an example from the real world. Warren Buffett is the world's greatest investor, and over time he has outperformed the S&P 500 by times, hundreds and thousands of times. It is not just a few percentage points. And if you look today at your own self, over time you can improve your interests from a scale of 1 to 10, right? But if you focus on your skills, then it becomes a 1 to 10 times difference from what your other colleagues might have. And so in living congruent, it is about thinking, does this job allow me to use my skills and to grow my skills? Rather than thinking, am I interested in this job? Am I passionate? Am I waking up excited about this job? Because that can be tempting, but it might not be the most useful measure of when you should perhaps stay or quit your job. So looking at this trifecta framework in what your purpose for, or what your skills are, what your passion is, and what your profit driver is, will be a better framework in terms of assessing when you should quit your job. Well, let's look at the next one. The next factor is culture. When I was in my first workplace, I used to take the lift every single day to work, and every day I saw different people come in, and some of them were really, really dreary, dull, and tired. You could see in their eyes, they were just on their phones, and it looked like they hated being in that lift going to work. But when you came home, it was a different story. People were very excited. People wanted to get out of work as soon as possible. They even held the door for you, and they deliberately closed the door even faster so that they could get better and out of work as soon as they can. Why? Why is this so? Because of this thing called culture. Steve Simpson, the researcher and founder of this theory called unwritten ground rules, found that this constituted the workplace culture, or how we do things around here. There are two important words that you should look at in this particular definition. The first one is we. When you look at we, you find yourself asking, do I identify with the people here? This is how we do things here. And if you're not part of that, then you might find yourself excluded and not feeling a part of the workplace culture that you are in. The next thing is how we do things here. It's about your actions, your behaviors that contribute to the workplace. And so, few questions that you might think through. Does your personal value gel with the values of the workplace? Are what the workplace sees as important equally important to you? And is the way things are done around here the way you would do them? Whilst we can't find 100% fit, you need to think through these questions in order to see if you are able to continue working in a workplace culture like that. The third factor is people. You know, I once had a conflict with a colleague. It isn't the first conflict that I've had, but it was probably the hardest because it made it difficult for me to sleep. I was dreading work, and I was not wanting to talk to people around this colleague. And once the supervisor said to me, whether you quit or not, there will always be people like this. I believed her, and I thought, well, if I work through this, then I will become a better person. If I work through this, I will become a better person. You know, in retrospect, I realized that was probably the most silly thing that I could have done. Wasn't really the best thing. Because I realized one thing. Great workplaces self-select. What this means is that when you look at a workplace, you'll realize that the people who are there are often alike. If you look at a great workplace, the people there are equally motivated, driven, and skilled at their jobs. Great bosses have the skill of picking out great people, and they have also the skill of removing people that are not alike to them. This is really important because in my first workplace, people were regularly shouting at me, people were humiliating me in public, and people were just not happy with my work. What happened when this was given to my bosses? They chose not to do anything. I'll say this again, they chose not to do anything. And today that might be you, isn't it? Because you might be complaining about a particular individual or work colleague that you have, and nothing might be done, and you feel really, really sad. You wonder, like, why is this the case? Why am I putting myself through this and nobody's doing anything about it? That's because workplaces self-select. Great bosses have the tendency to select great people, whilst poor bosses select poor people, and they condone poor behavior. In Google's Project Aristotle, they tried to discover what was the reason for great teams, and they found that the most important thing was this thing called psychological safety, or how safe you feel when you walk into a room. Do you feel safe with your fellow colleagues to talk about the mistakes that you've had, and see them as learning opportunities rather than as chances to shame you? And so at the foundation of any great team is trust. At the foundation of any great team is trust. And if you look at people within your workplace, do you trust them? Do you enjoy them? Do you enjoy being with them? Because what's important is what does your boss tolerate, but what's also more important is what can you tolerate, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a fourth most important factor, and that is happiness. And if you ask yourself, are you happy in the workplace? I want you to just give yourself a score from 1 to 10 right now. Just take the number off your head about how happy you actually are. And 10 being the most happy, 1 being the most worst. You're not happy, you want to get out as soon as possible. You wonder why you're even there. Are you happy? You know, one afternoon after work, I was in the toilet and looking at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. I was seeing my hair recede. My hairline was receding. My hair was dropping off. I was thin. I had grown to a shell of myself. And that's when I realized that there are only so many days on earth. There are only so many days on earth. And if I choose to let any of them come to waste, by continuing to be unhappy at work, not bringing my fullest self to work, then I am wasting my life and what I've been put here to do. And so today, as you think about an exit or not an exit, I want you to think through these questions. Firstly, are you procrastinating? Are you procrastinating on the change that is needed? Because procrastination, as Shane Mallah, the entrepreneur, once said, is not just a waste of time, it is a waste of life. Are you telling yourself, I will do this tomorrow? I will quit tomorrow. I'll quit when the best job comes. To put yourself off the necessary changes needed. You know, friends, today you see a picture of me speaking when I was in university. And I want to share a quick story before I end. Recently, I was offered a better job. It had more responsibilities. It was with a great mentor in a great organization. And the best thing was, I turned it down. I told myself that I wanted to work through the difficulties in my current workplace so that I could grow from it. But a few weeks later, as I took a step back and thought through my decision, I realized that it wasn't because I wanted to work through my difficulties. It was because I don't think I deserved the job. I don't think I deserved something better. And if you take anything or one thing away, is that you deserve better. That there is a limit, a finite number of days that you live on earth. And it is your decision how you want them to count or not count. Today, the ball is in your court. It is your decision. How would you want your days to count? What was your most insightful takeaway from this? Just drop a comment below and I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.